Hi everyone, how are you? Thank you once again for joining my series, The Decades of Action Challenge. This video is going to be a summary on the last 10 movies that I've seen in the series, going from 1978 through 1987. I'm going to be talking about each of the movies and picking a couple of favorites. Before I get into that, though, I wanted to mention, since I didn't post a video last week, I want to talk about the fact that Breihan posted his essay on The Bourne Identity, which was his pick for most important action movie of 2002, and at the end of the article he said that his next essay would be on Kill Bill Volume 1 by Quentin Tarantino, which was an incorrect guess on my part. I considered picking Kill Bill Volume 1, but I thought, no, I think Breihan is going to pick Volume 2 for the next year, and for this year it's going to be Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, and I was dead wrong. Also, Breihan said something to the effect of Kill Bill Volume 1 being the only true action movie Quentin Tarantino has made. Apparently he doesn't consider Inglourious Bastards or Django Unchained to be action movies. And he doesn't consider Kill Bill Volume 2 to be an action movie either. Apparently it's much more dialogue, a little bit too dialogue-driven to be considered an action movie. I don't know. I mean, there's some pretty great set pieces in there, which is why I picked it. But if he doesn't consider Tarantino's follow-up to Kill Bill Volume 1 to be a true action movie, then he probably won't pick it for his next selection, which means that I've guessed that one wrong too. So, since he hasn't publicly said which film he's picking for 2004 yet, I'm going to change my guess to The Bourne Supremacy. Breihan's already picked 2 Terminator movies, 2 Rambo movies, and at least one other set of 2, I can't recall exactly what it was exactly off the top of my head, but for the series, he'd picked the first 2 of both of those series, so I figured it's not a big leap to think they would pick both The Bourne Identity for 2002 and The Bourne Supremacy for 2004, so I'm changing my guess. And I might also change a few more guesses based on the ones he's picked so far. I started with 1983 to guess what all the movies would be throughout the rest of the series. And I got a few of them wrong, including Aliens, Terminator 2, Total Recall. These are movies I didn't think that he would pick because they're too science fiction-y. They're not really straight action. I consider them science fiction movies with lots of action, but he apparently considers them action movies with lots of science fiction. He also said that he wouldn't be picking science fiction or fantasy or comic book movies unless they had a big impact on action movies in general. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe I've made a few more guesses incorrect. Like, for example, 2010, The Expendables. That was my pick for 2010. I'm thinking maybe he won't pick that one. Maybe he'll pick Iron Man 2 instead. Or maybe he'll pick The A-Team. Or Salt. I just don't know. So I am going to be adjusting a few of my guesses and revising my list slightly before he makes those revelations. So I'll be putting that up a little bit later. In any case, before we get into that, let me first talk about the movies that I saw over the last 10 years of choices. For 1978, The Driver. The Driver is directed by Walter Hill, scripted by Walter Hill, stars Ryan O'Neal as a getaway driver, very similar to Ryan Gosling's character in Drive, which came out about 6 years ago. Bruce Dern is the cop hunting him down. Isabelle Adjani is sort of a femme fatale type. The movie was produced by Lawrence Gordon, who also did Predator movies and Die Hard movies and Lara Croft movies and Hellboy movies and Waterworld. He's got quite a resume as far as action movies go. The score was by a guy named Michael Small, who I'm not really familiar with. Liked this movie a great deal, really enjoyed it. And my favorite set piece of this movie, there are 2 really big set pieces in the movie. At the very beginning, there's a big getaway drive or sequence with Ryan O'Neal at the wheel, and at the end there's a big chase as well. I'm going to pick the first one, the one that starts the movie off. That one was really good. So that's The Driver. Next we have The Warriors. The Warriors, also directed by Walter Hill, co-scripted by Hill and a guy named David Shaber. It's based on a novel by Saul Urich. This movie is about a street gang in New York trying to make it home to Coney Island any way they can after they've been accused of killing off the leader of a rival gang. Michael Beck and Deborah Van Valkenburg are the main characters. Also James Remar, David Patrick Kelly, Mercedes Ruehl also show up. The score is by Barry Dvorzan. Barry Dvorzan. I got my notes here on the back of this card. That's why I'm looking at it this way. And the action highlight of this movie for me was the fight in the men's room. They're at a subway station. The warriors hide in a men's room. There's another gang that's after them. They go in there, and then there's a big fight. Very, very rapidly edited fight. Really, definitely the highlight of the movie as far as action scenes go. Next we have, for 1980, The Octagon. The Octagon is a Chuck Norris action movie. It's directed by Eric Carson, was co-written by Paul Aaron and Leigh Chapman. Chuck Norris's co-stars include Tadashi Yamashita as Sakura, his longtime nemesis, Lee Van Cleef, from who you will remember from Escape from New York, as well as a couple of Sergio Leone westerns. Carol Bagdasarian as an ally that Chuck Norris has in fighting the bad guys. Art Hindle, Karen Carlson are also in this movie. The score is by Dick Halligan. And this basically has Chuck Norris looking for his adopted brother, who's become his nemesis, tracks him down to a compound, which is called the Octagon, and thereafter they have a big showdown involving lots of guys fighting each other. That is definitely the big set piece of that movie, Sakura's compound. Not a really big fan of this movie, didn't like it all that much, but it did have a couple of decent fights in it. 1981, of course, couldn't be anything other than Raiders of the Lost Ark, directed by Steven Spielberg, story by George Lucas and Philip Kaufman. The screenplay was by Lawrence Kasdan. The score was by John Williams. It stars Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, the two-fisted archaeologist, I guess you could say, a guy who goes looking for artifacts around the world, but frequently gets into himself into a lot of trouble and has to fight his way out. Karen Allen is his leading lady. Paul Freeman is his nemesis. The French guy Belloc, I pronounced it wrong just like in the movie. John Rhys Davis is a friend and ally that he has in Cairo. Ronald Lacey is one of the more infamous Nazis in the movie. Of course, this is about the hunt for the Ark of the Covenant. Hitler wants the Ark of the Covenant for his own nefarious means, and so the U.S. government recruits Indiana Jones to go and find it before he can. Denham Elliott is also in the movie. Of course, Denham Elliott plays a colleague of Ford's. Anyway, this is a really big, exciting, fun action movie, and the highlight, there are a lot of really great sequences in the movie. The highlight is undoubtedly the truck chase, in which the Nazis load the Ark into a crate and onto a truck covered by many armed men, and Indy commandeers a horse and rides after the thing and overtakes the truck and tries to get rid of the Nazis bit by bit as they're driving along at high speed along this roadway. It is one of the action highlights of any by any standard at all. 1982, First Blood. First Blood was directed by Ted Kotcheff. It's based on a novel by David Morrell. It was co-written by Michael Kozal, William Stackheim, and Sylvester Stallone, who stars as John Rambo, this former Green Beret from Vietnam who encounters a lot of trouble in a small town. He's come to visit a friend. The sheriff spots him, doesn't like the look of him, tells him to get the hell out. When Stallone resists, he places him under arrest. Knocks him around a little bit, and then Stallone goes back into warrior mode and punches a bunch of guys out and escapes into the forest, and at which point the local sheriffs and a whole bunch of other people try and hunt him down with very little success because he's just so good at what he does. Brian Dennehy is the sheriff. Some of his subordinates are played by Chris Mulkey and David Caruso, and Richard Crenna plays Rambo's former commander, who comes in and says, "You guys don't know what you're dealing with. You better just let him go." And Brian Dennehy's like, "We're not going to do that. We're the law. He broke the law. We're bringing him in." And it's like, "Yeah, your funeral." Jerry Goldsmith has done a lot of good scores. He did the score for this movie as well. And the set piece, my personal favorite set piece from this movie was the first ambush, in which after Stallone escapes to the jungle, he sets up a whole bunch of traps for the guys that are following him and takes them out one by one, ending with him holding a knife to Brian Dennehy's throat and singing, "Let it go, let it go." No, he doesn't sing it, obviously. He just says, "Let it go." That's a really good scene right there. There's a bunch of action set pieces, but that's my favorite one. From 1983, Project A. Project A is a movie that stars and was directed by Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan and Edward Tang co-wrote the script. The score was by Michael Lay, and Jackie Chan's co-stars include Yoon Bio and Sammo Hung. This basically involves Jackie Chan as a member of the Navy. The Navy has been at some sort of like unofficial war with the police department in the city where they're both based out of, and so when the Navy basically is punished basically for getting into a fight with some police officers, Chan and a lot of his comrades are recruited and forced to become police officers and have to obey the orders of the people that they were fighting. They are at one point sent to a hotel lobby to bring in a gangster. They have a huge fight in this hotel lobby. That's my favorite set piece of the movie. Of course, there are tons of fights in any Jackie Chan movie. That one is my favorite, in the hotel lobby. 1984, The Terminator, directed by James Cameron, co-written by Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd, who is been a producer on a lot of his films. The score is by Brad Fiedel, a lovely electronic score, which I really am a big fan of. Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, the first movie in which he played the robot cyborg assassin who's sent back in time to kill a woman who will one day give birth to a guy who will lead the human resistance in the future against the machines and get them destroyed. Linda Hamilton plays his target. Sarah Connor. Michael Biehn is a soldier who's been sent back from the future by the humans to protect her. Paul Winfield is a police officer who tries to protect her as well. Earl Bowen is a scummy psychiatrist who doesn't take any of this seriously. Lance Henriksen's also in the movie. Lance Henriksen was a bunch of Cameron movies like Aliens and his first movie, Piranha 2: The Spawning. It's a longtime favorite of mine. Really, really like the movie a lot. And there's a couple of very famous set pieces. One in which Arnold Schwarzenegger walks into a police station, just guns down a whole bunch of cops trying to get to Sarah Connor. But that's not my favorite scene. My favorite scene is the one close to the end where Sarah and her protector, Kyle Reese, are all by themselves. They break into a machinist plant and are being stalked by the Terminator, which has had all of its flesh, its artificially grown flesh, melted off as just basically a robot skeleton walking around stalking them. Really, really good suspenseful scene. Yeah, love the movie. Terrific movie. 1985, Rambo First Blood Part 2. As I said earlier, there were a couple of Rambo movies on this list right here. George P. Cosmatos, who went on to do Tombstone with Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer. He directed this movie. James Cameron actually was one of the writers on this movie, as was Stallone, and a guy named Kevin Jarre, who also wrote the script for Tombstone. Jared Goldsmith did the score, so that was, he did both of them actually. That's good. And Stallone, of course, returns as John Rambo. Richard Crenna returns as his part. Charles Napier basically recruits Rambo to do a recon mission in Vietnam looking for American POWs. He tells Stallone not to get anybody out, just to survey the place and take photographs, and Stallone's like, I'm not having that. If I find guys there, I'm getting them out. Martin Kove from The Karate Kid, he's also in the movie. Julia Nixon plays a young woman who's a Vietnamese soldier who provides some assistance for him. Steven Berghoff is a Russian. So not only is Stallone fighting Vietnamese Viet Cong guys, he's also fighting Russians in the 80s, of course. He has to do that. He has to fight Russians. And so my favorite set piece, or at least the most noteworthy set piece of this movie, is one where Stallone basically takes out a whole bunch of enemies one by one, eventually working his way to taking over a chopper that's loaded with machine guns and rockets, and then he flies it back to the compound where the POWs are being held and just blows the heck out of the place and rescues everybody. That's a big, big, big set piece, and it's definitely the highlight of that particular movie. 1986... another James Cameron movie, Aliens. He wrote the screenplay for this movie while at the same time he was writing Rambo, I think. James Horner did the score for this movie. He also did the score for Titanic later on, another James Cameron film. Sigourney Weaver reprises her role as Ellen Ripley from the first Alien movie directed by Ridley Scott. Michael Biehn once again appears in a James Cameron movie. He was also in The Abyss, and I kind of wish that he'd had a cameo in True Lies, but that didn't happen. Anyway, he is one of a group of soldiers that are venturing back to the planet that Ripley visited in the first movie, trying to rescue people that may have been attacked by aliens. Lance Henriksen is in this movie. He plays the robot Bishop. Carrie Henn is the little girl that they discover. Bill Paxton is one of the Marines, who's got a very sort of famous set of quotes assigned to his character. Jeanette Goldstein is another prominent Marine in the film. And of course, Paul Reiser, the scumbag of all scumbags. At least that's the character that he plays in the movie. Executive who is more interested in getting the alien specimen back to Earth so he can make a lot of money off of it than protecting anyone's life. There are some great action set pieces in this movie. The personal highlight for me is when Ripley realizes that Newt, the little girl played by Carrie Henn, has been captured by one of the aliens, is being held somewhere in the compound, and she's all on her own. Pretty much almost everyone else is dead. She loads herself up with a machine gun and with a flamethrower and ventures into the complex all by herself to get the girl back. A really, really terrific scene. Aliens, another longtime favorite of mine. Finally, from 1987... Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon is the first of 4 movies starring Mel Gibson and Danny Glover as L.A. cops named Riggs and Murtaugh. The movie is directed by Richard Donner. Of course, Shane Black is the writer in this movie. Like many Shane Black movies, it's set around Christmas time. Even though it takes place in Los Angeles, there's no snow on the ground anywhere. The score is by Michael Kamen and Eric Clapton. Michael Kamen, of course, also did the score for Die Hard, which was produced by Joel Silver, who's also producer on this movie. A lot of the same people, except for the director, made both of these movies. Mel Gibson, of course, plays Riggs. Danny Glover plays Murtaugh. Gary Busey plays the top henchman of the heroin dealers they're trying to take down. Tracy Wolff plays Murtaugh's eldest daughter, who gets, unfortunately, roped into the action when she's abducted by the bad guys. Tom Atkins is a guy named Michael Hunsaker, and then you've got a guy named Stephen Cohan who plays Captain Murphy, Riggs and Murtaugh's boss, and he appeared not only in a lot of other Richard Donner movies, but he also plays the captain in all 4 Lethal Weapon movies, as does Mary Ellen Trainor, who is married to Robert Zemeckis. She plays the police psychiatrist, and she's in all 4 movies as well. So nice consistency there with the cast. A lot of the supporting cops change, but those key characters are the same throughout all 4 movies, including most of the people that play members of Murtaugh's family. Of course, this movie had a bunch of sequels, but the first one's sort of the darkest and most violent of the bunch. The action highlight is probably where Murtaugh and Riggs get captured by the heroin dealers, and then they get the upper hand and they shoot their way out of the nightclub and then onto the street as the bad guys are trying to make their getaway. They race through the streets trying to take them out. There's a lot of different shootouts and set pieces in the movie, but that one is probably the best one, or at least the most noteworthy one for me. So now I'm going to pick a favorite movie and a least favorite movie. My least favorite movie is probably The Octagon with Chuck Norris. It's a very kind of messy movie, not very well written. It's just kind of it's got a lot of extraneous stuff in there that really could have been pared down. You take a note from Die Hard, just include the information that's really irrelevant. As far as my favorite movies go, that's not really hard pick at all. That's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Raiders of the Lost Ark would be my favorite of these particular 10. It's been a long-time favorite of mine ever since I first saw it. And as far as the set pieces go, well, it's really, really tough to beat the truck chase from this movie. Really tough indeed. So that is going to be my pick for favorite action sequence and favorite film of this set of movies. Like I said, these series starts with a movie that ends in 8. Sorry, a year that ends in 8. So in this case, it would be 78 through 87. The next set would be 88 through 97, and so I will start on that tomorrow. Friday will be the day that I will post, hopefully consistently from now on. I'm a week behind because I was waiting basically for a new TV to be delivered. I got a new flat screen TV because I really wanted to watch the 1988 pick on it rather than on a little, much smaller TV that I was using previously. Now that I have that, I'm going to be watching something very big, something very, very special, his pick from 88 and on all the movies since then. I don't know how it's going to work with 2017. If he's going to pick something, Breihan, the writer, is going to pick a movie from 2017. But if he does, I better hope that I'll have seen it in the theater, because I might not have a chance to watch it, or to at least to rewatch it before the end of the year. I don't know if it, it has to come out on disc by then, and I hope that it does. So yeah, that's the set right there. I hope that I haven't forgotten anything. Oh, one more thing. Since I skipped a week, I'm going to make a double feature in the next at some point, and I think I've got a good idea as to which one it will be. There's a couple of films that were in back-to-back years that were done by the same director, so I'll probably make that either a double feature video or two separate videos in the same week, one of the two. Anyway, I've gone on long enough. Thanks very much for watching. This has been your summary of the second decade of this series. I hope you've enjoyed it. The link below is to the playlist where you can see all these videos, and of course another link to my Facebook page. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.